I'm here in conversation with Fiona Keogh. And Fiona is one of the people I've known in my life the longest. And she is a financial advisor who lives in Spain. So, hi, Fiona. So, my first off the bat question is, why Spain?
The reason why I chose Spain, well, wanted to go somewhere warm. And also, I'd been going to see a friend of mine who'd lived there for quite a long time. And I kind of fell in love with it. I always thought Spain would be like beaches and people drinking and things like that. And then when I really discovered Spain, there's so much more to it. So there's lots of history, the food is fantastic, and just the culture is so good and so nice. And it felt completely different from the UK.
Mm,
And that's why I chose it really, going back.
mm. And when was it? Because I'm thinking it was before COVID. Was it before COVID?
It was just before. So we moved over we chose October 2018. So Robin and I had only just got married and then we chose to move to Spain. But anyway, we chose it in 2018 and then actually moved in April 2019. So we had a few months before COVID hit. And so we were able to go out and about and discover Spain. Before then, we were then locked in for a few months, and that's it, really.
Mm,
Yeah. So nearly, we've been here over 4 years now.
wow. And you've moved once or twice in terms of literally from house to house.
We moved about 7 times
Oh my goodness.
before, because when we first got there, we didn't know where we wanted to live, so we used Airbnb. It was a bit of a last minute move to Spain anyway, because my daughter got into school there, and we had 2 weeks to move over. So it was quite short notice. So we just used Airbnbs for the first kind of 6 months, and it meant we had to move from one house to the other every 6 weeks because of being places being available, and we chose lots of different locations in the area to see where we liked. But then
Mm,
we bought a house in 2019, so at the end of November, and then we have moved again since
mm,
properly. So
mm.
yeah, a lot of movement within the area. So we know every part of the area now. And if somebody says, "Have you been there?" We've probably lived there, so, or near there. So we do it.
But that must have been really good in terms of finding where you wanted to purchase a property. Because if you've moved around a lot, you're going to get to know it.
Yeah, and in fact, I say to people, never just go on one of these viewing tours where you just go and look at houses and buy the first house within 5 days, because you don't really know the area until you've lived there.
Mm,
And so you actually need to spend at least 3 to 4 weeks in an area just to see if it's going to suit you. So
mm,
we found it really good, really, because it meant that while we were living in different places, we could have a look at other places and then choose the area that we really wanted. I have to say that the one that we chose originally, we really liked. So we lived there for 3 years, but the one that we bought, and it was fantastic at the time. But then we got bored of where it was, and there wasn't as much going on as we wanted. So that's why we moved again.
mm,
But it suited us for a good 3 years, so
mm.
it's ideal.
And when you lived in your first home, the 3-year home, was that chosen in terms of location of your daughter's school?
It was, yeah, because we had we one of the most important things for us was to choose her school, because she was 14, nearly 15 when we moved, and so education at that age is key. And she was studying the British system
Mm,
of exams, and we didn't want to pick her up and move her into a Spanish school when she didn't actually speak Spanish. We'd had a few lessons before, and it would have been unfair for her. So we had a look at all the schools in the area and chose the one. And we wanted to be within driving distance of that school, well, a short driving distance of that school.
mm,
So that really dictated where we lived.
yeah.
And we also wanted to be a little bit in the country so that we'd got views all around us.
Mm.
That was probably the biggest change because we decided actually it was too countrified in the end.
Yeah, but you have to discover these things, don't you?
Yeah,
Like when we moved into Massachusetts, we lived somewhere that we thought was great because it was outside the center of town and that kind of thing. And then we were like, it's too outside the center of town, you know? So,
it makes a
yeah,
huge difference to your lifestyle, actually, doesn't it? So
yeah, yeah. And it makes a huge difference to everyday life. So,
it does.
yeah. But that said, that was the priority. So it makes a lot of sense. And then tell me a little bit about how it must have been for you and your daughter in the build up to moving to Spain, because obviously I know you would never do anything that wasn't on board for everybody, but
Yeah.
equally you're a real stand for things you want to do and that you believe in. So I love that. I love the fact that you could root for something that would mean a lot to you, but without negating but and involving everyone else. So yeah.
Well, if we talk about what actually happened, so my daughter and I were here anyway to see my friend. And while we were lying on the beach, a typical sort of person on holiday, I said, well, should we live in Spain? And my daughter said, yeah, that sounds a good idea because she would go for it. And we said, we just got to persuade Robin now, my husband, to move to Spain. So when we got back, he'd had a really bad day. He was working in the college, really stressful. And he came back one day and I said, Naomi and I would like to move to Spain. And he said, yeah, okay. And that was the way it was made. So we all decided all together that we'd move to Spain. But I think it was quite important because we went on a few trips before we actually moved. So we went
Mm,
in October. And we took my son with us at Christmas because he was at university at the time. So it wasn't as important for him because he'd already kind of semi left home. And he was probably the hardest thing for us because he'd chosen a university right down the road from where we lived,
oops.
sort of within the same city, because he could just nip home whenever he wanted. So because we'd try to persuade him to go somewhere further afield to university, we thought we'd have to move so that
Mm,
he'd actually get that break from us as well. But it was quite good because we brought him with us at Christmas and he managed to have a look around as well because he was a bit jealous, I have to
mm,
say, because the rest of us go to space. It's all right for you. So we took him with us and we helped him choose the houses. And then because we moved in the April and because I was still working in the UK, 1 week in the UK, 1 week in Spain, it meant we kept our house in the UK until he'd finished at least his first year of university. So he did have the house to go back to within his first year.
mm,
And then we sold it at the beginning of his second year when he was already well established in his own house in Birmingham. So it wasn't too bad, but that was probably the hardest thing when we made the
mm,
decision because the three of us were on board completely. It was just leaving the elder son behind. So
mm. Yeah, it's a challenging one because he has been involved ever since. And obviously, you said he was involved in choosing the homes.
yeah,
So that would have made him feel included. And by having your home, your UK home, he didn't, it wasn't too abrupt. And it wasn't like there was a kind of a shift as opposed to a sharp change.
yeah, because that was important because he was only 18, so still
Mm.
quite young, really.
Yes.
And then, of course, we planned all this, and then COVID hit about 6 months later, and so we couldn't see him for 6 months. So that was really difficult. That was probably the
Wow.
hardest thing because the flights in and out of Spain were stopped
Mm,
completely. Well, all
mm,
flights were stopped generally, weren't they? And so he was stuck in his student house with everybody else having gone back home. So, but in the end, we had my dad was with us, and so his flat was free. So my son moved into that flat, and he really enjoyed having a house to himself, actually. So we included him. We did cinema nights together where we'd all watch the same film, and we had meals together where we would put him on the mobile phone just on WhatsApp so that he could join in while we were eating, and we'd order him the same thing. So we managed to include him that way. So it's quite good. But yeah, a
It's
difficult time for everybody, I think, though.
yeah, it definitely must have been. But you didn't let anything stop you. I mean, given how long I've known you and, you know, the things we know about each other's lives, I am pretty impressed that that seems to be one of your qualities. You don't really let things stop you. So tell me a bit about that in relation to Spain, because in terms of jobs, in terms of, you've touched on the houses, but what things came up that could have been natural kind of stops where it's like, oh my God, why have we done this? And you already had COVID to contend with. And so
I think the hardest bit was when we first moved, because we were all really excited, but then reality hit. So my daughter had to start school, a brand new school at the age of 14, which is never easy. And then I was working 1 week in, because I had to keep flying over to the UK, and then I'd have flights cancelled on the way back. So that was probably the most traumatic period, actually. And it was at that point, really, where we're thinking, oh, we're doing the right thing, because I did enjoy my job in the UK and I tried to make it work. But then it's quite difficult for UK employers to employ somebody in Spain because they need to set up a new company, or you go self-employed. There's that option, really. And so they were trying to they were really good, actually. So they were trying to sort it out from their end. But then I was trying to sort out everything in Spain and in the UK, because we'd still got the house here. And it did come to a point where my daughter had settling in problems at school, because it was a completely different environment to a UK school. UK schools are quite touchy-feely, they're quite friendly to the kids in the UK schools, whereas in the Spanish international school, it was very much, well, this is your homework, you do it, you're responsible for it. If you don't do it, that's your problem. Whereas in the UK, the teachers are a lot more like part of the student network. And so she found that quite difficult, and came to a point where she was getting into not into trouble, but she was getting told off a lot. It did her good in the longer term, but at the time it was pretty traumatic for her, and obviously making new friends. And then with me being away as well, there came to a point, I think, where I'd got Naomi having problems in Spain, me in the UK, at a trustee meeting, because I was a pension manager, so I had to sit through trustee meetings. And at the end of one of the meetings, I pulled one of the partners aside who I worked for, and said, I just can't do this anymore. And I burst into tears, and he said to me, well, if you ever play poker, Fiona, I'm going to not trust anything you say to me, because he said I couldn't tell at all. But I did start crying, and he was like, I can't do this anymore. It's like too traumatic traveling from Spain to the UK. So in the end, I said, I'm just going to have to quit my job and try and find something in Spain. And that was probably the hardest point. But I was very lucky in that, actually, I was offered a job within a month of that decision. So and the company I was working for in the UK held on to me until I could find another job. So I was really, really lucky, actually, that I'd got a very, very supportive boss that I worked for. And he was fully supportive. The other people that I worked with were saying, well, as long as we can come and visit you, that's fine. And so it worked really well. But I would say that would be the time where we regretted it, because we'd already committed to Naomi going to school. We had school fees to pay as well, because it was an international school, and you can't suddenly turn around and say, we're going to take you back to the other school, because that would have been even more traumatic for her. So we had to give it a go, and I was just very lucky to have found a job in Spain straight away, and it was on a good salary, so I could support everybody and pay the school fees as well. So it worked out well in the end. But yeah, there was probably about 4 months. We were still living in rented accommodation at the time as well. So we hadn't really got the stability of being in a house for a long time. And I think really it was when we moved into our house, which we knew was ours, that we could then relax and sort of start to enjoy Spain again,
Mm,
really.
mm.
So yeah.
And in that beauty of hindsight, was it kind of a good thing that you'd ended up having to change jobs? Because in a way, your life was straddling two countries. You were kind of not you were moved to Spain, but in some ways you were between two locations. So did it feel more grounded, more settled?
Yeah, much more, because the thought of having to go travel every other week, and also the fact that you're trying to then work in a tiny little flat with a swimming pool right outside in the really hot weather was quite difficult. But then when I got the job in Spain, I knew then that we were settled. We got the house, and it coincided with Naomi being more settled at school as well.
Mm,
So it all kind of came together. And meanwhile, we'd left my husband, who was like trying to look after us all, being supportive to all of us. And then he got at the same time Naomi being snappy with him because she was stressed, me being snappy with him because I was stressed. So the poor guy had to deal with two very, very stressed women at the time. And he managed to just be the one that was the solid one for the whole period of time, really. So
mm,
we were lucky to have him, I think, at the
mm.
time.
And then and then recently you've made a departure job-wise, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah, so I worked for the company in Spain for 3 years, and I was employed, and that kind of got us through the school fees and when that finalised. And it coincided with me being able to take some money from my pension, which was quite good timing. So what I decided to do was to take a little bit of money that I got saved in that to tide us over, so that then I could start my own business. So basically, I am now working for myself, which is great because I can pick and choose how many clients I want to deal with. And that's quite important for me because I want to be able to sort of look after them well. And also, it gives me the chance to travel a bit more, so that if I need to be in the UK, I can go, but I'm not sort of tied to going to the UK. And it also means we can see a bit more of Spain. So since I've gone self-employed, we've been to Poland, we've been to Italy twice, and we've been back to the UK twice as well. So it's great. And it took me a while to sort of get the clients, but actually I was very lucky that two of them came with me anyway, without me having to ask them,
Mm,
because I was under a contract, so I had to be quite careful anyway. And they both contacted me and said, we've tracked you down to this new place that you're working, and we want you to look after us. So I ended up with two clients that came across. Another client that had been looking at going to the other company decided to come with me as well. And then I've been given leads so that I've been able to build up clients. I've got 5 now, which is really good. So it's worked out well. And that's allowed me to do other things as well as just working as a financial advisor. So it's been
mm.
handy.
So it sounds like things have really consolidated, because if you had that first home for 3 years and that tied in with 3 years of Naomi's
Naomi
schooling,
School.
yeah, and having a steady income from the existing job,
Yeah.
and then the new move, the final move where you live now, that preceded the new job.
Yes, just. But it meant that we weren't as reliant on a car because we moved to an area where we can walk everywhere, which is a
Right.
big plus. So, because petrol costs obviously had gone up quite
Oh
a lot,
yes. Yeah.
gas costs. So it meant that we could actually then rely on walking, cycling, doing a bit more, everything. So there was a supermarket, well, 3 supermarkets within walking distance, which we hadn't had before. And Naomi also decided that she was going to go to Central America for a few months and work in England for a couple of months. So it meant that we could have a slightly smaller house, but in a much better location. So, and we, you know, can walk to the beach now, which is really nice. Yeah, it's great.
And in your last place, you had a pool. Do you have a pool in this
We did.
place?
No, we don't. We sacrificed the pool
Oh, okay.
so that we could be closer to the beach, because as it would be in the US as well, the closer you get to the sea, the more expensive houses become. I think it's pretty much the same everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we decided, well, we only really use the pool in July and August. I probably used it more than most, but generally we didn't use it as much as we needed to, and the cost of running the pool is quite high as well. Whereas we've got a great big sea that we can actually swim in every day, and it's warmer than a swim pool as well in the winter. So
And it maintains itself.
doesn't it? We don't have to clean that. No, it's self-cleaning. It's great. It's like having a great big robot that just does it for you. So yeah, it's much better.
Yeah, so much better. Yeah, I really think when you live in a coastal, I've lived in a coastal town 3 times, I think. And I'm in a coastal area now, and it's the first time I'm literally in walking distance. Like matter of minutes. Are you matter of minutes to the sea as
Yeah,
well?
we are 6 minutes away,
Oh.
6 minutes walk. So yeah, and it means that in the evening you can just go for a walk along the beach. You know, it's really nice, and because of that, you get quite a lot more tourists here, which in a way is quite, it gives you a bit more of a buzz, because I'm not really a country person, I'm more of a city person. But the alternative to the city is beach, because you get the best of both then, sort of things. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm between the city, quite close to the city, closer than we were, and right by the sea. So for me, that's the perfect arrangement, city and sea. I'm the same as you. I would feel a bit remote in the countryside.
yes, it's not for everybody.
No.
Yeah, and having to drive to your local shop is a pain. I mean, it was fantastic during COVID, because we had a big plot of land and a swimming pool. So during COVID, when everybody else is stuck in their small houses, we had this big house. My dad was over as well, so it's a really special time actually, COVID. But when COVID finished, then we realised actually no, we want to be a bit closer to where life is really.
Absolutely. And going back to your job, what's kind of special about doing the job you do in Spain? Because it's almost like you've created from what I'm picking up on, you've created a perfect niche for yourself, but that's of distinct benefit for other British people living in Spain.
Well, yes, when you think about it, most British people that move to Spain are of retirement age. So a lot of the people that move, they're in their 50s. You get younger people that move to the city, but most people who move to the majority of parts of Spain are 50 upwards. And when you're 50 upwards, it's much harder to learn a language. And I know this, I'm a linguist, and it's still finding it difficult to be really fluent in Spanish. So for somebody who hasn't got a language background at all, coming to Spain is actually quite difficult, because you need to be able to speak to people that are English speaking. And this applies to Scandinavians as well, because they speak English, they don't speak Spanish. Germans are the same, all different nationalities. We also have a lot of US people as well that move to Spain now. So they need people they can speak to that can speak English. And that doesn't mean it's just English British people, it's Irish people, it's Spanish people that can speak fluent English and everything. So what I'm part of is, there is an organisation called Spain Explained, where there's groups of us professionals, whether it's accountants, lawyers, financial advisors, insurance people, that offer a sort of central group, so that if there is a British person that comes over, or a Scandinavian, they want to speak to somebody in English, they just contact this group, and then the group will put them in touch with people in their area. So there's not just me as a financial advisor, there's lots of others in different parts of Spain, and it covers all of the areas where most people tend to move to. So it's quite a good thing, and it also means that I can link in with other professionals. So, for instance, yesterday I was doing a seminar in Andalusia, which is about an hour and a half away from me. And there was a lady that came along who was Spanish. And she said, well, actually, I'm a translator. And we said, oh, that's great. We need translators on the in the group, because everybody needs a translator when they move over. So we invited her to join the group as well. And it's quite a good thing for anyone who speaks English living in Spain, who will struggle to learn the language. And I know sometimes you say if you go and live in a country, you should learn the language, but it's a lot easier said than done, because if you're from a country such as Poland and you move to the UK, you have to really learn English, because not many English people will be able to speak Polish, whereas a lot of the Spanish can speak English. And because there's so many other nationalities there, English is the common language for a lot of things. So yes, we speak Spanish when we go to the doctors and we go to hospitals and things like that. But it's nice to be able to speak to somebody about investments, about insurance, that can understand exactly what we mean, because it's so specific, the vocabulary for that. So it's been quite good to do that.
I think when you're, like you say, if everybody's over 50, everybody's entering, they've entered a new country, and they're adapting to everything. But you're also, from that age upwards, adapting to different situations in terms of tax and all these different things, and being eligible to redeem your pension and those, that situation. So it must make a big difference to have your own native language, or indeed, if you're Polish, a second language, but a language that you're used to working in, because it sounds intimidating enough to go to a hospital and have to, because that's a tense situation, to have to try and find Spanish within you. So to deal with these kind of issues that really rely on a lot of trust, and where we naturally lack confidence because, I don't understand pensions, I don't know about taxes. So when I go to someone, I go literally handing myself over, like, I need you to tell me this. So the trust element of what you provide and what this organisation, Spain Explained, provides must be enormous for people. And the fact that they can transcend all of that using English must be like a gift.
Well, I think it's useful. And as you say, many people going to the doctors, they take a translator with them. So if they don't speak any Spanish, they'll do. But if they are dealing with something that is very country specific, and there are US advisors as well, and there are UK advisors, the UK advisor will understand the UK situation as well. Because, for instance, pensions, you can't just look at it from a Spanish perspective. You also have to look at what the UK rules are and what the UK system is. And it's the same for any US person living in Spain. They're probably better going to a US advisor or somebody who's got experience of US style investments, because they have to translate into the Spanish tax system. And many people are also still doing US, UK tax returns, as well as doing Spanish ones, and therefore they need somebody who understands both. And that's really important for people. So, for instance, I wouldn't speak to, if there was a German person, they've got a German pension, I wouldn't try and understand the German pension. I would be able to explain the Spanish situation to them, but not really go into great details with regard to the German pensions, because they're all completely different. So you do need somebody with the background in both to be able to give proper advice to people.
Absolutely. And how did you master learning the Spanish side so that you can fuse the Spanish and the UK side?
Well, we had a lot of training. So the company I worked for did a lot of tax training. So one of the first weeks that I had to go to London actually and sit with a tax advisor just to go through everything in Spain and the way things work in Spain, and keep abreast of all the tax changes. I've also done a qualification, which is like the Spanish equivalent of a UK financial services qualification. so that I can understand the way banking and insurance and finance works in Spain as well as in the UK. And that was really good. And that was in Spanish as well. So that was good for my language learning. I
Wow.
have to admit, I did translate the answers though, because I thought, well, I might translate the answers just so I get those right, but to the test. But no, it was really good. It was a good way of learning the Spanish system as well. And now I just am naturally quite interested in what happens in change, because the thing with Spain is, and I presume this will be the same as the US, we have different tax regimes in different provinces within Spain as well. So if you live in Valencia, you're paying a different rate of tax to somebody who lives in Murcia or Andalusia. And because of where I work, I have to understand the Valencian, the Murcian, and the Andalusian rules, which means that you're learning 3 different tax regimes as well. I wouldn't even want to start dealing with somebody in Madrid or Catalonia, anything like that. So I just stick to 3 provinces, which I know about.
That's incredible. And so all of that came before you went off on your own. So then when you went off on your own, you already had all this knowledge. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, I did. Yeah, so
Wow.
it was quite useful. So I did kind of get a lot of experience from the last employer, and then we are still regulated in Spain anyway, so we have to follow the guidelines that the regulators will want us to know about. So I follow a lot of lawyers and accountants and continue to get tax updates from them.
Fascinating. Is there anything else you want to say about the work you do? And
No, I mean, I enjoy it. I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy building relationships with them. So it's quite nice when they do want to come and see me after I've left the company. So it's good. And some of them become friends. I mean, I'm still on Facebook with a couple that I advised when I first came over. They've moved back to the UK, but we still talk to each other, even though they're no longer clients. And they invited us to their 60th birthday party in Thailand, which got cancelled actually because of COVID. But no, it's quite nice. It's a good job to do. It's, in fact, I do recommend that people do consider it as a career. So in fact, it sounds very boring for young people to become an accountant or a financial advisor, but it is one of those careers that you can do in many other countries, and you get a visa for it as well. So for instance, for me, it wasn't such a bad problem because I came over before Brexit, but it still means that people who are doing the same job as me in the UK can come and move to Spain and work, because they will get a visa fairly quickly because of the type of work it is and because of their specialist knowledge. So it's a useful career to consider.
And do you find that one of the things of when you get new clients, one of the things they appreciate is that you've trodden their path? You know, some of your experiences overlap just as a human. Yeah.
Well, they like it when you live where they live. So for instance, if I had have quite a few clients that are coming over, they're moving over, and they'll say things like, well, what's the process, what do I have to do? And I've been through it all, so they do prefer that when I can actually show them that. And or even talking about, well, if you're getting a new kitchen done, where do you recommend? Or
Yeah.
I'll ask the clients that actually, so if I start talking about it, they'll often say, well, we recommend this really good shop there, and it builds a link with people, and it's much nicer than having somebody who's talking to them from the UK who understands the tax position but hasn't actually lived there because they haven't gone through it themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, it must make a big difference. And then what's your relationship to Spain now? Did you feel, I got the sense when you moved that, that you shut the back door, so to speak. When I've moved abroad with my husband, it's always been a 2 to 5 year plan. It's never been, even where we are now, it's it's temporary. We've got an end in sight, so to speak. But when you moved, you didn't do that, did you? It was, we're
No, we
moving.
decided it was, well, we decided that if we were going to move, we'll do it properly. So and that included selling the house in the UK, which was quite an important step, really. So yeah, and it does mean that it feels like home for us. It doesn't feel like we're only here working temporarily. It's a home. And when we go back to the UK, it feels really alien now, actually, because we're so used to, going to Italy for us is not as bad as going back to the UK because we feel more part of, I don't know, it feels more similar to Spain. In fact, we end up speaking fluent Spanish when we go to Italy because, try and speak Italian and all your Spanish comes out of your brain. It's amazing. Even France now, we do that as well. So, yeah. So, no, it is our home. And I don't think either of us would ever consider at the moment. I mean, this is obviously never say never, but we think of this more as a home than the UK now.
And the proximity of UK to Spain, I mean, no flights are particularly cheap and so on, but the proximity of the two countries must make it, because obviously your father and siblings are still in the UK, friends are still in the UK, and you've got quite a big wider family. So
Yes,
is the proximity important?
it is. I mean, we couldn't have gone to Australia or anywhere like that because that would have been too far. I mean, for instance, we're going back for Christmas and the flights are €55 return. So it's just like getting the bus to London, and it's probably a bit quicker actually once we got from the airport. So and at a push we could drive there, we could get the train there, we could get the coach there, so you're always accessible to it and people can fly over to us, they can come and see us. I've had my aunts over, I go back for big birthdays, so if it's somebody's 60th birthday I'll go back for that. And we try and keep family Christmases and things going so that we still continue as a family. And we can do it because we're not that far away, really.
That's amazing, because I'm often seeing when you return for important weddings, and you don't really miss out.
We don't stop.
Yeah.
So come home for a rest. It's not really a holiday, but we try and fit. As you say, I have a really massive family, and we're quite close as a family. And so when I go back, if I see one person, I've got to see them all. And Rob's still very close to his friends. I'm still close to my friends. So and I think it's the people really that bring us back, because I would say that my family are friends as well as family.
Yeah.
And we've probably got, when I think about it, when I think of my family, my sisters and my cousins and my aunts, we are a big friendly family, and Rob's the same with his family. So we'll always keep that as important, really.
So maybe it wasn't apart from the COVID elements, maybe it wasn't too much of a wrench for your family in you moving. Maybe they didn't feel it too badly.
I don't think they did because my sisters lived in different parts of the UK anyway, so you have to make an effort to go and see them. They were both 2 hours away from where I lived, whereas we can fly there in 2.5 hours. So it's really not that bad at all, really.
And does your son still live in Birmingham, or did he move
No,
away?
he moved to London, so he's in London. My daughter's in Sheffield, so they are both away from where we lived anyway. And yeah,
I was just thinking it took you moving away, for him to move away, because I would.
I think he would have stayed at home, but he had a girlfriend, and I think he's been with her for 4 years, so he's moved closer to his girlfriend, which is quite natural anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, so your ties to the town are mainly your father.
Yeah, it's only my dad, really. And he comes over to see us for 2 months a year because he's lucky that he can come over whenever he likes. He hasn't got any restrictions. So and as I say, he was with us for COVID for 6 months, which so we probably saw more of him actually in Spain than we do in the UK.
Yeah.
Because he lived with us for 6 months 1 year and 5 months the year before, and now he comes over for 2 months at a time, not to live with us, but with his friends. So but he's only down the road when he comes with his friends. So we see a lot of him.
Yeah. And then very recently you've started a new departure, haven't you? which
Yeah,
is
so
very exciting.
it is. Yeah, so I've always dreamed of being a writer, and I think we both know that because I think we both had similar kind of.
We both share that dream,
We
yes.
both shared it, yeah. And I had I joined a writers group in Spain actually, and that's what's really prompted me to do it because there are quite a few like-minded people. There's one lady who's a Canadian author that's in the group, and then some other people that are poets and writers, and we meet up once a month. And so it kind of forced me into thinking about, well, I've got to write something for the meeting because you basically write something and then you read it out to everybody in the meeting, which is a bit nerve-wracking first, especially when you haven't done it before. And so I started writing a lot when that happened. And actually my husband's doing it now as well. So he's doing
Oh,
poetry now as well. So he's joined in with the group as well. And I had an idea for a children's book and I read it to the group and I said, well, that's good. You should go and get that published. So I did. And that's being published at the moment. So that will be my first one, which is called The Clever Little Gecko. And that's inspired by a story about my cat, actually. But I won't go into too much detail because people can read the book. So that's The Clever Little Gecko. And I'm also in the process of having a second one published as well now. And it's all quite exciting because I wouldn't have been able to do that in the UK because I don't think I'd have ever had the time to join a writers group and actually just talk to like-minded people. So it's been a really good experience for me to be able to do that.
mm,
And I'm looking forward to keeping going with that.
mm. And are you going to make departures outside children's books or?
Yes, I'm actually writing a novel and I'm on chapter 22 at the moment, which sounds great, but it's it's about a relationship that breaks down. So it's quite an awkward kind of sad kind of story about two people that got together when they were very young, and as they've got older and their kids have got older, they've just kind of gone apart, and it's and that's what it's all about. It's all about how their relationship kind of is seen from both sides because sometimes it's the man writing, sometimes it's the woman writing, and it's how they see things very differently to the other.
Mm,
So I'm doing that, and I've got a plan about it. I've got to do another 10 chapters, so still quite a few left to do, but it's got a
mm,
bit of a dramatic ending.
mm.
But I won't say
Very.
anymore.
No, I won't ask anymore. That's very exciting though. And one of the things I think about living in a new country is exactly what you just said, is the discovery of the new, the things
Yeah,
that you didn't anticipate, the things you daydream about in your regular life, but then sometimes things are kind of brought out into the open when
yes,
because I do, my life is completely different from any of the jobs I've ever had. And because I don't work. So I venture
we
into
look
all
at it.
sorts. Well, kind of, yes and no. And I venture into all sorts of new things. And I'm doing an acting class at the moment. And yeah, and I have no intention with it. I don't need to become an actor, but it is great fun. So yeah, so that's really really inspiring about your book. So thank you.
Okay,
Anyway, so I would like to thank you very, very much for being with me to talk to me about Spain and sharing your experiences of moving to Spain and of the roles you carry while you're in Spain. And I wish you all the best with the book writing, and I will stay inspired and follow what you're up to. So, and one day I
and you
intend to
too.
make it to Spain to
Yes,
see you.
and I might make it over to wherever you may be at the time.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks a lot.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.